Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Voices of Western. This is the Humans of Western podcast, and today I'm excited to be introducing our guest, Nathan O. He is an alumni of Western University. He studied a kinesiology degree and later came back to pursue an executive MBA at Ivey. Um, he's passionate about so many things, lots of things I will get the chance to discuss. But to give you the ideals, he is currently a VP of Business Development at Ezra Coaching and has a lot of experience when it comes to health and wellness, business development, sales in his previous roles and careers. He was also fortunate to be able to travel and live in Hong Kong, which is very far from where Western is located. And I'm sure it's something we'll deep dive into. So Nathan, I will pass it on to you to give probably a better introduction of yourself.
No, man, that was great, Hossein. Thank you. Thank you a lot for having me. And, I was like smiling as you were reading because it's always nice when you hear someone else introduce you. And you did an amazing job. So I guess to try not to cover all that you covered, I was born and raised in Toronto. I grew up in downtown in the Riverdale neighborhood. And I decided to go to Western. Actually, sorry, before that, I have a twin, so I'm a twin brother. I'm the youngest of the two. We're fraternal twins. But we both decided to go to Western, and that was because it was a funny thing with Toronto. 2 hours is close enough so that you can make visits, but far enough that they don't happen all the time so your parents don't come sort of following up and all that you do. So but I went for that reason as one. For two, kinesiology. I was really good at sports and didn't know what else to do. So Western had a phenomenal program, kinesiology, back then, still does. And I did that. And then I melded that with a bit of business. So I learned more about my passion for business at Western. Now I'm in Hong Kong. I'm actually in Hong Kong. Caught me at an interesting time coming back for a friend's wedding. But we'll be back in Toronto, and that's where I'm based. So I'm happy to be here.
Amazing. Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, I remember reaching out to you and I said, okay, let's do it very soon. You said, I'm going to Hong Kong. And I said, even better. Glad we made it work. So why don't you tell us about your journey to Hong Kong? I know it started, well before these years. How did you end up there?
Yeah, it was so I graduated in '08. So I was at Western for 2004 until 2008. And um I don't know. I mean, the biggest thing was, so from a heritage standpoint, my parents are from Hong Kong. I'd never gone, only once as a kid. And I think a lot of immigrant families in Canada, you as like the second next generation, you lose touch, of course, with your culture. In my case, was Chinese. A lot of us do. And for me, language, values, just the way that I live my life was very Canadian. And I knew there's a whole other side of my family or culture that I didn't even know. And so after Western, I knew I wanted to travel. I think a lot of us have that feeling back, after graduation, because you're grounded in London, Ontario, right? Some of us are lucky to be able to go overseas during summertime, but I didn't. I was just going back to Toronto. And so anyway, I wanted to travel after Western, and which I did. And I decided Hong Kong because, to my previous point, I wanted to reconnect and discover my roots. And my mom helped suggest that, and um, I decided to go. And I knew five people in Hong Kong. Couldn't even say that they're close friends either. Um, I had a job lined up in the sense that I interviewed before I went through my mom's friend. She, an auntie, introduced me to a guy who worked at a big coffee company here. I had no idea I mean, coffee to me at the time was Tim Hortons um, down at UCC. So that was all I knew of coffee. Um, didn't have experience working, obviously. I didn't work in the summertime either. I was a waiter and a summer camp counselor throughout the summer times at Western. I did not have any formal internships or anything like
No,
that.
like summer corporate internships.
Zero, nothing. So a lot of people in Ivy and whatnot, students, you had that great experience. I had none. And I mean, I was, waiting tables and taking care of kids at summer camp. That was my summer job for 3 summers. So the fourth summer, the last one, of course, I did the same thing, but then with the idea of going to Hong Kong. So anyway, I ended up going, packing my bags. It was a single flight, no return yet. And that was just a big, bold move that I made, partly because I wanted to discover my roots, but secondly, I wanted to, being a twin, do something different. And I think family values and the way you are structured really defines your choices in life sometimes. And so in my case, I was a twin. Everyone thought my brother would do something like that. Yeah, Julian, he's more kind of out there. Nathan is a little bit more conservative, being close to family, social circle is really important to him. No one would have guessed that I would be the one to just peace out and go out to Hong Kong. And I did. And crazy decision, but an amazing decision in my life.
Wow. Even hearing about it is so much fun. Moving to a different place, knowing less than a handful number of people, that's amazing. But I think what you had in mind was working a job that was already decided. Is that fair to say? Like you already had a job
Yeah,
offer accepted?
yeah, exactly. The offer on the phone was, if you come to Hong Kong, and obviously presuming you stay, you'll get the job. So that, of course, that my boss at the time was about commitment. And once you get on a plane and you commit to it and you're on your way, he's like, yep, this guy's going to be committed. He's not going to fly to Hong Kong just to, well, he could have actually just go for a month and then come back. But I think I made it clear to him that this is a one-way ticket that I bought. And I think that really set him straight in that sense. And then I went over came to Hong Kong, and yeah, I didn't even know the language. And like it was crazy. Like
So
I
did you
can
learn it? How
understand
did you
it.
learn it?
I learned, yeah, I just like with everyone who travels, right? It's like you have to learn on the spot. So I couldn't read, I couldn't write. I could recognize some characters, Chinese characters. I could understand it when someone speaks it to me because my parents would speak it and my relatives, but I've never built up the courage to speak it out loud. It's just like if, in Canada, we all learn French, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're native or your family speaks it, you will start to say a little bit of French, and then you quickly get to a point where like, oh crap, I forgot this word, like I forgot that word, and you stumble and you revert back to English. The same thing with Chinese. It'd be like I'll say a few things and then I stumble and then revert back to English or just because quiet. So I learned because going out to restaurants, meeting people. My boss then at the time told me, dude, if you only speak English, you're going to get 60% of the business that you probably could have.
Wow.
Or less. And I was like, yeah. And I was doing sales. So of course that's going to really change my mindset. I need to learn Chinese and learn it quick. And my colleagues are great because they all speak Chinese, Cantonese, and it was always a language exchange. They want to learn English so they can teach me Chinese. So it was a good combination. So I learned pretty quickly, and yeah, it's just a product of environment.
And so at the time, the role that you were working in, was it a local kind of sales job that you would sell to Chinese businesses, or did it have any international components? Because I'm thinking if it had international components, then it would have been really helpful.
Yeah, that's a great question. And for sure, yeah, it was a mix. I mean, that's why he said there was a certain percentage of business you could get, which is the English speaking international community here,
Yeah.
but you'd be missing out on a lot of local ones too. And so that was my job. It was selling coffee machines and coffee beans to corporate companies. It was a fantastic job. It was hard, but it was like I had to quickly learn Chinese and I had to quickly learn everything about coffee. So I became the Canadian coffee guy in Hong Kong.
Did that involve going like door to door sales as well, or just like,
Yeah, it
well,
was cold
nowadays it's like
calls.
LinkedIn sales. So I don't know how it was like
Yeah,
back then.
back then was door to door. Like I would go and we would get numbers conferences and events and all kind of stuff. But one strategy that we used was when I went into a building, I would look because there was a directory, right? Posted on which companies were on which floors. So I would take a snapshot of that, and knowing it was like a corporate office, if I just helped to service a client of mine in this building, the chances of other companies needing a coffee machine or me knowing the footprint of their office pantry and coffee setup and water setup, then the higher chance of them of me making a sale to all the other companies in that building. So if you want to say door to door, it was really it was because I take a photo of the directory, see all the companies, which floor they're on, go back to my office, and then online go to websites and then try to find a contact person, call them, cold call them, and say, hey, I was just in your building yesterday. I helped this company. Would love to be able to see if I can do the same for you. And there you go. Door to door sales, coffee.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's this component of trust involved too. I've seen a lot of videos where people say, for example, realtor, if they sold a house in the area, they would just go to their neighbors and say, hey, by the way, we just sold your neighbor's house. If you want anything, like reach out, here's my business card. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure there's a lot of trust involved in that process too, just by seeing people who are close to you or similar to you, I guess from a business perspective, are using this service. So maybe we could also utilize it.
Yeah, we're all human beings that rely on sort of trust and reputation. And if you know someone who's similar to you or has something in common with you, engage in something, it's going to obviously help yourself make that decision, right? And so, yeah, that point is totally valid for sure.
Sense. And so, other than doing a great job at selling coffee and coffee machines all these years, what else have you been up to?
Yeah, I mean, so that was like in my early career. Um, that was like, yeah, a while ago. I did coffee for 6 years. After that, I decided I didn't want to be known as the Canadian coffee guy anymore. I mean, that was a great achievement or title to have. But when you're in Hong Kong, it's like the finance capital of Asia. At the time, it was something that I wanted more. I always kept talking, selling coffee and providing this service to people in the finance industry, to bankers, etc. I wanted to be in that scene, not servicing them, just wanting to be there. And I decided in order to get me there, I thought, you know what, I need to pursue more credentialed sort of like continuous education. So I decided to apply and get into the Ivey EMBA program, so the Executive MBA program. Luckily, Ivey has a campus in Western, for those of you who don't know. And I applied and I got in and it was great. And so that helped me to really shift and pivot my career. Suddenly I was, thrust into doing business and understanding more. And so I had more opportunities after that. My network definitely advanced as well. But I think the value of me doing the MBA was because I had 6 years of experience. So I really knew, and especially at the EMBA level, I was still very young for an executive MBA. I was, I think, 27. So I was 27 or your sort of like later 20s is great for your normal MBA, but as an executive MBA, it was quite young. So I fortunately was able to get in just due to the nature of circumstances at Ivey then. But anyway, the years of experience I had, I asked them, I said, why did you guys accept me? Because I'm like 10 years younger than your normal applicant. And they said, we really appreciate your 6 years of business with Pacific Coffee, which is, everyone in Hong Kong knows Pacific Coffee, everyone. It's synonymous for, it's like with the competitor to Starbucks, to put it into context.
Oh, wow. So it's like that big.
It's huge, right? And so everyone knew Pacific Coffee. So I think a lot of people at the enrollment people at Ivey said we would love to have a person who knows a local brand, but it's got an international flavor to it, right? Because Pacific, like it's like a Starbucks. So that was very fascinating for them to be able to, and you've committed 6 years there. So you've got a lot of experience in one company. And I think that loyalty and that experience, I mean, for me at the time, even my parents were like at the 3 year mark, like, dude, are you gonna move to another job, man? Like, you've been there for 3 years already, and I did another 3 years. So I think that loyalty, even though I think from a salary standpoint, right, everyone knows if you hop, you're gonna increase your salary perhaps faster. Things are changing now, I guess, but a lot of us will be able to hop jobs to get a better offer, hop another job to get a better offer in a quicker amount of time. But for me, it wasn't the case. And I just committed 6 years to doing that. And I got in, pivoted, got my MBA, went into financial services in the finance industry, did private equity investment, learned a boatload there, then did startup, understand what that was, consulting, with all of my background in sales, business development, marketing, consulting businesses. And that was during COVID. And yeah, it was crazy. And then now, fast forward to today, a year ago, I came back to Canada. And now I'm working at Ezra, as Hossein, as you mentioned earlier. Ezra is a coaching company, and it's just been phenomenal. So I help change lives through introducing coaching, professional coaching to people and organizations. So similar to the service I did for corporations here in Hong Kong, now I'm doing it in Canada, offering, doing business development and introducing the power of coaching. So from coffee to now coaching.
C to C, coffee to coaching.
C to C, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I personally have been privileged to have a few people to like bounce ideas off of. We don't like call each other mentor and mentee, but I do really consider them as coaches in my life. And like, given that you mentioned this, what's your perspective on people who are coachable? Like, I personally believe that not everyone is coachable. Not everyone is ready to be coached. Not everyone takes the action that has to be taken. And so what's your perspective on that?
Before I share my perspective, I want to know, like, what are a few things that you think, man? Like, what do you think are like maybe two qualities to be coachable?
I think one of them would be accountability, being accountable to the conversation that is going to be had and then actually doing it. And then the other thing would be positivity, like looking at it from an optimistic perspective. I think is going to be really helpful. Again, like I'm not going to share about growth mindset because at this point it's just cliche, but honestly, it's just from my experience, people who I have seen who are optimistic about the future, want to learn, are ready to take on the challenges, turn out to be the people who succeed most of the time. Maybe not always, but most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are great points because I think accountability is so important in anything you do, right? I would say, and positivity for me is a number one thing in the way that I lead my life, right? It's hard, but it's important to have that mindset, the positive mindset, that glass half full. I would say from a coachability, just, and my answer might change day to day, but I'd say just off the top of my head, thinking about people who are I think coachability is so important in the workplace. And I think someone who shows the commitment to themselves, meaning I have a goal and I want to improve, and I'm holding myself accountable. So using your thought, to the commitment to seeing change. So that's ability to, have, I want to do this for me and not for other reasons, not for someone else. So I think if in order to have the best outcomes in having a coach, you want to improve, right? You have to be bought in yourself for change, because a coaching experience will change you. So it's going to give you different perspectives. It's going to shift. So the second part is open-mindedness. So the commitment and also open-minded, knowing that I'm going to benefit and change, or I'm going to be uncomfortable talking about a few things, right? Spotting out my strengths, but also really highlighting areas of improvement, right? And I think that's what a coach will do, is just to coax that out, and your openness and open-mindedness to that is really important. I think as we even if it's not a formal coaching, if it's a mentorship or someone at work, your manager or someone, or who wouldn't want to work with someone who's open-minded and committed to developing themselves?
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Like if I were to see that, if I was someone and I had my direct reports, it's like if they're wanting to improve and they're open-minded to getting feedback, right? Then that's great. So to me, I would love to work with someone like that. So I would say that's the two things I would think of.
And where do you see the balance between too much coaching versus too little? Like I personally know whenever I want to make a big decision, I consult so many people, like up to a point that it gets overwhelming. And for example, one of the recent comments that I've received was, hey, like, I think you know what's best for you, so trust yourself with making the decision. And yeah, just getting your feedback on that.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, because it's a funny thing when I always think about when I mention being a twin. I always tell the story of the difference of my brother and I. I mean, it's not the fabric of our identity, but I would say that oftentimes my brother would be the one who goes to a store, and just at the time when he was a kid, he would pick a toy right away, go straight line, beeline straight for the toy he wanted. Me, on the other hand, be like, no, not this one, maybe that one. I take something, show my parents, hey, should I get this? And like, no, it's up to you. Oh, I don't know. And then put it back and then go. So very indecisive. I would say in regards to that, I think it's okay to ask a lot of people for advice, and that helps to shape your decision, right? But I think, to me, having a limit, and it depends on what the question is, right? Depends on what you're trying to solve for. If it's something that doesn't have a lot of, like, where diversity of opinion is good, then yeah, ask as many people as you need to accumulate the data internally in your head to come up with the best outcome. But if it's something that you already kind of know, or timeliness, like you don't have time to ask all these people, then yeah, of course, then you're going to limit the amount of people. I mean, of course, to me, the rule of three is just think of three different people for a suggestion, but three different people who may know me in a different light, in the sense, like, because you can ask three of your buddies or whatever, but they might all be similar and give you a very similar answer. But if you ask someone totally different, depending on what the ask is, right? Then you're going to get that. And I love the diversity aspect of asking these things, but I would say set a limit before you go out there, because you could just get swayed into so many different, thoughts and opinions.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what happened to me the previous time. But I was able to figure it out. So we're all good
Good.
now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you have touched a bit about your story being a twin. Do you have any failure stories or learning lessons, as you would refer to them, that you would be comfortable sharing?
Yeah, I would say, man, uh, it's funny when we think of entrepreneurship and failure, right? A lot of people think, oh, failure is a badge of honor and all that stuff. And yeah, in a lot of respects it is because you learn a lot, right? Do you have to fail in order to learn? It helps because you hit rock bottom and whatnot. It hurts. That's when it's going to really make a lasting impression. An experience that I had that I like to share with people is uh, I didn't I in the beginning you're saying I went to Western for kinesiology and I only did Ivey afterwards. But the thing is I was trying at the time to be in Ivey during my undergrad to get an HBA. And it failed. I did not get in. In third year was when you're supposed to start your HBA. So in the second year, we took Biz 257, the course, which is now Biz 2257. And I failed it in my first attempt. It was terrible. It sucked because, you see all your friends who were in the class with you, most of which got their mark and, we're going to go to Ivey, or they decided not to go Ivey or whatever. It was a huge thing, of course, back then for me. And to not be able to pass really took a hit on my own self-confidence. But I decided to take it over the summertime. So I kind of knew why I failed. And that was because I was so involved. I had full course load, of course, very involved in clubs. And then, of course, like going out, socializing with friends and all that stuff. So it just was really tough to commit that much time. And I think for all students, right? It's so hard to balance. And so we pushed ourselves to the grind to make sure we get all our courses in and all that stuff. I think maybe things are a bit changing now, but what I realized quickly was failed, took it in the summertime, loved it, had nothing to do but part-time summer job, which was being a referee in the summer intramurals.
Like coach, soccer referee?
Yeah, soccer referee, which was amazing. And it's funny that we're saying this is because where I used to be a referee is now where the new Ivey building is. So it's really anyway, weird to sort of see that. I used to referee on the field where Ivey building is now. And I was taking Biz 257 in the summertime. I managed to pass, do well, but afterwards I realized I don't want to go to Ivey. So I ended up just finishing my kin degree. I had a major in kin and a minor in psychology. And I took several psychology courses, business courses as well. But yeah, I never ended up undergrad Ivey. I went, 6 years later. So I think from that experience, it was awesome. To have failed the first time, it sucked. Took a hit on my ego, but I came up with a much better outcome. What about you?
Well,
I would love to hear what your experience is like with failure, man.
I mean, I've had my fair share of failures too. I guess for me, it would have been my first year when I came to Canada or immigrated to Canada in 2018, September. It was really difficult to make friends. So the whole transition was taking a toll on me. I was not able to make lots of friends in residence. So that's looking back, that's always what I consider to be my biggest failure. I ended up with a handful of quality friendships and lived with two of those next year in an off-campus, unit as suite mates. But the thing that always kept bugging me was I wasn't able to make lots of friends in first year. So that kind of inspired me to go back to residence as a residence don. Mm-hmm. And then I was nurturing those relationships between other first year students and even myself, learning how to create friendships with others. And now it's just something that I do naturally. I'm still an introvert, but I feel a lot more comfortable going out there and making friendships and helping people out.
As a Don, was it easy to so because it's like kind of like your job, residence Don, right? To check up on people and just connect with them and stuff. Was that was it easy in regards to like making you a bit more forcing you to be more extroverted?
It definitely helped. The dynamics still weren't the greatest because when I accepted my Dawn offer, it was when COVID happened. So I was working in the first year of COVID, September 2022, not first year, but like the year where it was fully on. Um, there were so many restrictions. My role went from community building more so to health and safety management in residence.
Mm,
Some
wow.
people were not super receptive to the idea, but I had a great supervisor. She was always sharing ideas about what worked in her experience about community building. So one of the things I used the year after when I returned as a returner was ordering pieces of chocolates like Kit Kat, Snickers, those kind of chocolates, and going on door knocks, when knocking on doors, and then when the students open, just giving them one with no expectations, no nothing, and just checking in. Worked wonders. 2 years. I did it twice, well, more than twice, for a few times, and I would say it's always something that they were happy about because it gave me the opportunity to just check in without formally checking in, if you know what I mean.
I love that, man. That's such an interesting way you used to sweeten them up a little bit, figuratively speaking, but also not. That's an awesome thing, man. I think that it's it's part and parcel of what made your experience successful, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I
You said it was a
definitely
game
love,
changer, right?
yeah, 100%. I loved my Western experience so many more times because of this. Academic wise, I didn't have much fun, but extracurricular wise or like job wise, it was phenomenal.
Yeah, man. I think that the to when you're motivated by certain things, kind of really keeps you going, whether it's your job or your passion or volunteer work or something like that, right? It's so important to have that, um, and really pinpoint something that you can find really interesting to yourself, right? And commit to it. It's so important in life. Like I find that in mind, like a lot of people that I talk to, they may not love their job. It's a means to get the money, staple, whatever. They may have their other passions, but I think as long as you have those passions and you work on them, it's what keeps us driving forward, right? And in your job, I didn't love every job that I did, or maybe not even job, but just tasks, of course. Some like menial tasks are like, why am I doing this day in, day out? Like, what am I doing with my life? But it's important to have the other aspects that we really can hone in on. And I think I remember in undergrad, it was for me with the clubs, right? And passion. And you said earlier, like coffee and sports, a huge passion of mine. Uh, and yeah, and I think it's really important to have that. I think all people who are successful will have that, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't know,
You
like
just
do
gotta be
you
passionate about like I guess one thing or a few things. But like here's also the thing though. I sometimes get confused because I love so many things. So now I have to commit to one or two and actually finish them as opposed to switching between tasks.
am I hearing
I
a bit of a trend here, Hossein? Like so earlier before you had too many people that you're talking to. So same thing here, right? Too many interests.
yeah,
What I mean, do
maybe.
you think that that's an issue?
I No, I don't think so. At least it hasn't been an issue so far.
Okay. And you prompted it a couple times. Is this something that you're aware of that you're like, man, maybe I need to reconsider how much I take on my plate or number of people I ask to make a decision?
Maybe, but the trend I've noticed is that as soon as I get busy, I kind of like put my heads down, get to work. So it depends on the workload. If I have too much, then I don't have like too much time to ask for those opinions or get as many interactions. But if I don't have much going on, then yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I would argue that that has been one of my success stories with the opportunities that I've received. It's just basically because I've been involved. Um, I've been focusing on building my network or nurturing those genuine relationships with people, and they pay off sometimes, sometimes not, but optimistically you're creating a relationship so that you're happy and you can help someone else be happier.
Yeah, I think, and to me, having involvement with a lot of things is great because you're building that, as you said, the connections to others. And I think an area where you can talk and relate on multiple levels because of the experiences of involvements that you're in terms of passions or um, extracurricular things, it makes you more of a, it makes your human experience more rich. Let's just say that. And who wouldn't want to talk to someone who kind of has rich experiences, right? Because they can relate to more people. And I think that's where, for me, part and parcel of why I'm enjoying, but I'm also really good at what I do is because I've been able to have so many cool experiences. Not to say that I don't, but I'm just thinking that like how many people have moved from Canada to Hong Kong, like and worked and successfully lived their life for 13 years abroad. And met the love of my life, my wife, was able to carry out different jobs, had many hobbies, learned language, learned everything. But then coming back, it's like, oh man, this guy's life is like interesting. He's had so many different areas, but that's where I'm able to relate to people, so many different people, right? And I think having that diverse experience is really important to not only have it interesting for yourself, but for other people too, because you can share, you can relate, you can talk about all these different things. And at the end of the day, as you were saying, connection, relationship with others, it makes life that much more worth living, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And is that something you have noticed that when you like came back, people start asking you questions about, your journey back in Hong Kong or how it was, or were you perceived to be, I don't know, a very adventurous person?
Yeah, interesting. Because like when I came back, and I was looking for jobs. I obviously didn't get Ezra like the way that I had Pacific Coffee kind of like lined up before I came back. I was hoping that on my way back to Canada, it'd be easy. So it was like really hard for me to get a job. Um, but whenever I mentioned, so now when I talk to people, I don't lead with, oh, I was in Hong Kong for 13 years. But when it comes up and like the clients I talk to or whatever, if it comes up, you see a change in that sense. It's like, holy crap, that's so cool. Because I would say, like, oh, I'm not familiar with this part of Toronto or this place in Canada or whatever, because I haven't been here for this that long. And they're like, what? What do you mean? Yeah, I was living in Hong Kong for 13 years. And I'm like, what? You were there for 13 years. So I think it it's from what I see to answer your question, yes, there's a difference when people know that I've had abroad experiences abroad. So I think for anyone, in Western now, accumulate those experiences. Like that's an advice that I really, really suggest. It's like if you're thinking, I've had many students ask me before, man, I'm thinking of like doing this, or do I stay here and get a job in Toronto, which I know I'll get, or do I like travel and go somewhere else? The answer is clear for me because what I did was I went elsewhere. And so, but I also am very cognizant that that was me and for my own reasons, which I explained earlier, right? For other people, it's hard to see it through their lenses, but for just the sake of experience, I would say travel first and then you can get a job. That to me is important. A lot of other people might have different opinion. They might say, I have this job, I can be stable, start earning money, and then travel, right? But again, it's all very contextual.
I don't know how it's going to be for me because I'm considering traveling, but at least it's something I'm thinking about now.
We live in a world where the word comparison is really strong. I think even before, like, obviously social media, IG, TikTok, and stuff like that too. But I would say it's important as a student or as a young alumni to stave off comparison. It's very
Then that'd
easy
be
to
the
want to
best.
compare. It's very easy to compare. It's very easy to want to compare, but you're very different than a lot of other people. And I think knowing your own merits and being happy with them yourself or striving for more is really important because if you compare, you're never going to be happy,
Absolutely.
right? Because you're always looking at something. What did he do? What did she do? Like, what do they do that I haven't done? Oh, I need to do that. But why? It's because you intrinsically want it yourself, or it's because they've done it. And you think society judges you against them, whoever that is, makes a comparison, and you're not good enough or whatever. I think comparison is such a fascinating thing. And one of the things that I learned a lot actually from leaving Hong Kong and coming to Canada back the second time, this time, was I don't compare anymore. In Hong Kong, the society, of course, was I'm Chinese, everyone was Chinese. Well, it felt like, oh my gosh, I have like these are my brethren here, my motherland here. I have to do something with my life because I'm looking at all these great successful people and all that stuff. But I realize in Hong Kong, it's a very competitive nature, right? It's a very you have to, what is it? Stay with the Joneses kind of a thing. You have to keep up with the Joneses. You have to keep up with everyone. It's very unhealthy to me, culture, in my opinion, for myself. I think it drove a lot of me and my ambition to do more and eat at these really cool places, buy these really nice things, earn this much money, have these titles, go to these events, all that kind of stuff because other people were doing it. But did all those things make me happy? Not all of them, for sure not. Whereas coming back to Canada, I realized maybe my maturity, maybe Canada itself, but we just don't compare because everyone's so different. It's so hard to compare. And to me, it's in order for you to be really happy, the faster you stop comparing, the faster you'll be happier, in my opinion.
I mean, yeah, 100%. It's just mastering the technique of not comparing. That's what's difficult.
It's
That's like
knowing
the
yourself, right? Yeah,
exactly.
it's really hard, but I think there are ways to do that. There are ways to know yourself more deeply. And that's with reading, with talking to your loved ones about yourself in that sense, and asking people for feedback. Like, oftentimes we don't ask. We just assume, right? It's like, I'm going to be asking you after this, Hossein, like, what did you think? Right? But if I didn't think to do that, then I would come a walk away and think, great job or whatever, or not, or something.
Yeah,
But knowing more of myself would be in the best would be just to ask you, hey, how did I do? What did you think? Not how did I do compared to others, but what did you truly think of me? For me to better understand myself through your eyes as well, right?
absolutely. And it's also important to mention that um asking the right people for feedback is also important too, because I know I just watched so many videos and I've learned that you just have to accept feedback from the people who you want to trade places with. Or the other way, if you don't want to be in this person's position, then don't ask them for feedback. Or you could always ask people for feedback and just don't listen to it, right? That's also a good thing to do. But I think it's difficult to get a harsh feedback and then not want to listen to it if it's harsh and coming from the wrong person.
It's like another thing that's funny is like, have you watched your own videos of yourself?
uh, yeah, but it's not
You're
something
like,
I do. I don't like.
yeah, but that's like another way of also understanding yourself too, right? It's not, it's like you're observing, right? And when you see it afterwards replayed back to you, you're like, oh my God, I sound terrible. Or why did I say all these things? But that's another really good example of getting to know yourself, right?
So one thing that we're also introducing with this episode is diving into, hot takes. So we pick a topic that's been trending, controversial, and ask our guests opinions about. Nathan, this week I'm gonna ask you about Elon Musk and Twitter. He has been, really trending. I'm not sure if you've been following the news or not, but after the takeover, he's been firing a bunch of people left and right. So many people are resigning. There's a paid membership that's supposed to be coming up. I'm not sure how things are there. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I love this segment, as you will, because it sort of timestamps this podcast episode, right? If you look back at this like a year later, you're like, oh man, we talked about Twitter and Elon Musk. And you're gonna be like, oh man, that was weird. Because you're gonna know the outcome afterwards, of course, a year later. But I love the segment and asking these topics, which is awesome. And I would say my hot take on this is I like any change is hard for a company. I think it's probably there's a lot, of course, that the media doesn't portray. So just being empathetic, I feel for him, for Elon, just because I know this is a big undertaking. And it's easy to make him the antagonist in this story. It's very easy. The way it's painted. And then the employees he let go, are the ones who are the victims, right? And so I think I would step back and say it's probably really tough for him. Like he probably, if he could want to keep these people, he probably would. I'd like to think so. But of course, the reality is maybe not because he's got to really change things up, right? Because that's what changes. So I'd say my hot take is that it's I feel bad for the situation, but I think in feeling bad, that doesn't help. It's more, yeah, he laid off these people. Whoever's coming in, whoever's remaining, how do they do well and succeed? Because I think Twitter's an awesome platform and a lot of people really appreciate it. And I think that it has a place in society, in our lives. And I hope that it continues to sort of have another level of improvement. So that's my take on it.
I've been hearing a lot of different opinions on the whole paid membership. So many memes created about how to turn, $45 billion to $0. I guess that's how much you paid to acquire it. It's tough. I think he will have the chance to make Twitter a success. But what I can speak about the facts. Right now, the facts, at least from an outside perspective, is that the organizational morale is low. People are hurt. So many were let go without notice. I don't think they're going to be able to make an impact soon. I mean, I could be proven wrong and I'm fine with that. I just think too many changes have been happening too fast. And if it takes a step back and reorganizes his thought, it could become a big thing. That's what I think.
As a plug, not that Ezra's sponsoring this, but I would say these are the situations where coaching, whether it's Ezra or not, coaching really helps, right? It's the people who are not let go. It's the leaders at Twitter. Man, what are we going to do next? How do I manage this next step? That's what coaching does. It gives perspective, a sounding board. It gives comfort, motivation to the people who really, really need it. And that's exactly how we talk to companies, or I talk to companies and leaders and say, hey, are you undergoing massive change? If they're Twitter, then it's like, yes. Where do you need the help the most? A lot of times, let's start from the top. But the whole notion of you're missing out on a huge group of people who really need support. That middle manager level or something like that. That is huge. And that's what Ezra does. And that's why I believe in what I'm doing, because it's providing that support to people when they really need it most.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Part of coaching is also being close to university, trying to help college graduates or university members in whatever capacity. I've seen that you have done a great job with that because I've met you in person like 2 months ago. So my question to you is, how do you stay part of Western without necessarily being a student in Western?
Oh man, it's like to me, I first got involved with Western Alumni Association when I was in Hong Kong because I just wanted familiarity and a sense of belonging. To me, familiarity meaning I was halfway around the world partying in the streets of called Lan Kwai Fong or LKF is like the party district in Hong Kong. And I saw these people at this bar. It's called Al's Diner. And I was like, what the heck? They sound like really fun. So I go walk in, I see purple. What is this party you guys are having? Oh, we're from Western. And I'm like, what the heck? Yeah, we're Western Alumni Association. I go in, hey, I went to Western too. And then everyone's like, that familiarity was there and that sense of belonging. So that's where I really took to the association, being part of Western Alumni. That kept me involved with the school, kept me updated, really, because I was away for so, like, I was, in Hong Kong. And I'm like, man, this reminds me of home, right? And my identity was Western at the time, right? I loved it. And so that kept me really involved and committed and loyal. It became a great way to network and get to know people as I was living abroad in Hong Kong. And I've managed to be recognized to be this year, sort of nominated to the board of directors for Western Alumni, and now I'm board member, which I'm super happy about. I had a call this morning as well too in Hong Kong, to call before you, but this was with the Western board, and so it was great to be involved with a whole group of really established people, but have that shared connection and that love for Western. And so just giving back as well. What keeps me really in line is doing stuff like this. Like this, and that's why I so appreciate Hossein, like you reaching out and asking me to do this. And yeah, like it drives me, motivates me, something new, it's a new experience. And doing it, and hopefully the words that I say, the connections, people adding me on LinkedIn afterwards, a student, everyone watching this and hearing this, I'm more than happy to help because I was in your shoes before. And yeah, that give back fills my bucket, man.
Good to hear that. There are like not too many people who give back or enjoy giving back, so I'm so happy that you're here. And congrats on being a board member. It's a very
Thank
big
you.
achievement. I
Thank you.
guess as we are approaching the end of this episode, what's one advice you would give to current Western students or community members?
Oh man, there's so much. I would say the first thing I would say is reach out and connect. If anyone from Western student or alumni reaches out to me and just says, hey, I saw, Voices of Western or your podcast and whatnot, I'm more than happy to sort of talk to you. Like I will quickly message you back. Always doors open for anyone at Western. So the advice is just whenever you need something, like ask, go get it. What's the worst that could happen? You receive no, and then you kind of go on and move on. So I'd say that's a piece of advice. It's like if you want something, then make the plans to go and get it.
Yeah, I can personally attest to Nathan's speed of replies. He definitely sticks to that maximum 1 day timeline.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nathan, for your time and sharing your wisdom with our Western students and community members. And thank you so much to our listeners for listening to this episode. Make sure to follow our Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and all of the other social accounts at humans_Western and humans of Western. And don't forget to tune in next week. Thank you.